White woman snatched black CEO's seat, then turned frozen when she said, "I built this airline." The hum of the airplane filled the cabin as passengers settled into their seats, the quiet rhythm of a routine flight. But the calm shattered when Catherine Miller stopped in the aisle, her manicured hand gripping the headrest of seat 3A. A black woman was sitting there, elegant, composed and lost in the quiet glow of her tablet. Catherine's smile faded into confusion, then disbelief. "I think you are in the wrong seat," she said sharply, her voice slicing through the air. Amara Sinclair looked up, her expression calm but firm. "I believe this is my seat," she replied softly. Catherine scoffed. "No, this is first class. You must have made a mistake." When Amara calmly handed over her boarding pass, Catherine barely glanced at it before waving down a flight attendant. "Excuse me, there seems to be some confusion here. This woman sneaked into business class. You need to check her ticket again." Murmurs rippled across the cabin. Passengers lifted their phones, recording every second. Amara did not flinch. Her eyes held the kind of grace that comes from surviving countless quiet humiliations. Then Catherine said the words that made the cabin fall silent. "You do not belong here. This seat is not for people like you." Amara's reply was gentle but carried weight. "Actually," she said, looking her straight in the eye, "this seat exists because of people like me." A hush settled. The tension was electric. The flight attendant hesitated, and security was called. But before anyone could act, the scene froze, a moment suspended in disbelief. Before the world saw what happened next, this single encounter would reveal everything wrong with how power and prejudice collide. If stories like this matter to you, do not forget to subscribe and leave a like. It helps share voices that deserve to be heard. The chaos inside the plane faded into a blur of voices, flashing cameras and whispered judgments. But for Amara Sinclair, moments like this were not new. They were scars dressed as memories, each one reminding her how far she had come just to be questioned again. Long before the world knew her name, she was just a little girl standing behind the chain-link fence of a small regional airport in Georgia. Her mother, Evelyn Sinclair, worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by night and selling sandwiches by day, while Amara spent her afternoons staring through that fence, watching airplanes rise into the clouds. Each takeoff felt like a promise, a reminder that one day she would not just sit on one of those planes, she would build her own. Money was tight. Dreams were expensive. But Evelyn's love made the impossible seem within reach. She would tell her daughter, "Do not let anyone tell you where you belong, baby. You decide that yourself." Those words stayed with Amara long after she grew up, long after she learned that talent and determination were not always enough. At school, she was the girl who spoke less, but dreamed bigger. While others doodled names of pop stars, Amara drew aircraft designs. Her teachers praised her brilliance, yet the world outside the classroom had its own set of rules, unwritten, unkind, and unforgiving. When college applications came, scholarship doors opened slowly, then shut without warning. Still, she pushed through, earning a degree in aerospace engineering, one of the very few black women in her graduating class. The corporate world greeted her with polished smiles and hidden walls. Interview after interview, she heard the same polite rejection. "You are impressive, but not quite the right fit." Behind those words, she could hear what they would never say aloud. "You do not look like the kind of person we usually hire." Still, she persisted. She started small, designing fuel-efficient engines for regional carriers, often working unpaid just to prove she belonged. Her colleagues took credit for her ideas, and her managers treated her like an intern even when she led the project. But Amara never shouted, never begged for validation. She let her work speak louder than their prejudice. There was a night she would never forget, when an executive told her during a board meeting, "You are smart, but let's be realistic. No one like you will ever run an airline." That sentence burned in her chest for years, fueling every late-night sketch, every line of code, every presentation she built on borrowed computers and borrowed time. When her savings ran dry, she sold her car and moved into a tiny apartment near the airport, where she used to dream as a child. From that small space, BlueStar Airlines was born, not with investors or political connections, but with sheer willpower and a promise to create an airline where dignity flew alongside every passenger. Her concept was revolutionary. Equal pay for all crew members, transparent hiring practices, and free flight training for underrepresented youth. The aviation board laughed at her proposal, calling it idealistic. But within 5 years, her vision became a reality. BlueStar Airlines launched with a single refurbished aircraft, and within a decade it became America's fastest-growing airline, admired for both innovation and integrity. Every headline called her a pioneer. Every interview praised her resilience. But behind her calm smile, she remembered the fences, the rejections, the quiet rooms where people doubted her worth. She had not simply built a company. She had rewritten the blueprint of an entire industry. And yet, even after all the awards, the magazine covers, and the honors, she could still walk into a first-class cabin and be mistaken for someone who did not belong. The irony was cruel but poetic. Catherine Miller could not see the truth sitting right in front of her. The woman she tried to humiliate was the very person who designed that seat, built that airline, and redefined what belonging meant. Amara did not just buy a seat in the sky, she built the wings herself. The hum of the engines grew louder, almost as if the plane itself could sense the tension rising. Catherine Miller stood rigid in the aisle, her arms crossed and her voice sharp enough to cut through the murmurs spreading among the passengers. "This woman is in my seat," she declared, her words dripping with accusation. "She must have slipped in here before boarding. Someone call security." The flight attendant tried to calm her, glancing nervously at Amara Sinclair, who sat quietly, hands folded, eyes steady. Not once did Amara raise her voice. Not once did she defend herself. Her silence seemed to irritate Catherine even more. Passengers began whispering. Some reached for their phones, recording the scene as Catherine's outrage grew louder. "You people think you can just take whatever you want," she snapped, ignoring the growing discomfort in the cabin. "This is first class, not open seating." A young man seated a few rows ahead recognized Amara. It was her assistant, Jordan. He quickly stood up. "Ma'am, please," he began, but Catherine raised a hand to silence him. "Do not get involved," she said sharply. "I am calling corporate right now. Whoever allowed this woman to sit here will be fired." The flight attendant hesitated. "Ma'am, please, if you could just show me your ticket." Catherine waved it like proof of her victory. "Here, seat 1A. Now tell her to move before I report this airline for negligence." Amara took a slow breath. Her calm was not weakness, it was discipline. Years of being judged had taught her that anger only fed ignorance. "Ma'am," she said softly, "I believe you should double-check the name on that ticket." Catherine frowned. "Excuse me?" Just then, the captain's voice came over the intercom, his tone cautious. "Cabin crew, please hold boarding procedures. We're verifying a passenger discrepancy in first class." Dozens of eyes turned toward Amara. The weight of assumption filled the air. Everyone waiting to see if she would be escorted out like Catherine demanded. A few passengers whispered in sympathy, others simply watched, their curiosity overpowering their conscience. Catherine leaned closer, lowering her voice but not her arrogance. "You do not belong here," she said, repeating the words like they carried authority. "You people always think you can just walk into places that aren't meant for you." Amara met her gaze, calm, unshaken. "You're right," she replied quietly. "This seat was not meant for me. It was meant because of me." Catherine blinked, confused. What is that supposed to mean? Without another word, Amara reached into her leather tote bag and pulled out a sleek silver tablet. She tapped the screen, then turned it toward the flight attendant. On the display glowed a digital ID badge with a familiar logo, BlueStar Airlines, and beneath it, the words that silenced the entire cabin, Amara Sinclair, founder and chief executive officer. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The whispers died. Even the hum of the plane seemed to fade. The flight attendant's eyes widened as realization sank in. She looked from the tablet to Amara, then back at Catherine, whose expression collapsed from superiority to shock. You are the CEO?" Catherine stammered, her face draining of color. Amara gave a small nod. "Yes, I built this airline from the ground up." "And that seat you claimed?" "It was designed in my office." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Phones continued recording, capturing every detail. Catherine's trembling hands, her pale face, the sound of her own disbelief. The flight attendant straightened immediately. "Mrs. Sinclair, we are so sorry for this misunderstanding." Amara smiled faintly. Do not be. It happens more often than you think. Catherine tried to speak, but no words came out. Passengers stared, some shaking their heads, others whispering. She tried to throw out the CEO. The captain's voice returned, this time firm. All verified. Ms. Sinclair, thank you for your patience. We're cleared for takeoff. As Catherine slumped into her seat, the air in the cabin shifted. Embarrassment, awe, and something heavier. Everyone had just witnessed a moment they would never forget. The cameras kept rolling, the silence thick and final, unaware that this was only the beginning of Catherine's public downfall. The next morning, Amara's phone would not stop buzzing. Her assistant called in a panic. Ma'am, the video! It is everywhere! And it was. The clip of Catherine's confrontation had gone viral overnight. Millions had watched it, dissected it, shared it. Hashtags like Justice for Amara and Fly with Dignity began trending across platforms. The world had seen how calmly Amara handled the humiliation, and how mercilessly Catherine had spoken to her. Social media erupted like a storm. Some viewers were furious, demanding that the airline issue an apology and Catherine be removed from her position. Others, mostly those clinging to old biases, accused Amara of overreacting. She is just playing the race card, one comment read. People love drama, but this time, the world was paying attention. News anchors debated the incident on morning shows. Influencers made reaction videos. Activists called for stricter anti-discrimination policies in air travel. Even celebrities weighed in, some offering to fly with Amara as a show of solidarity. Meanwhile, Catherine tried to defend herself. In a shaky live interview, she insisted it had been a misunderstanding. But the internet does not forget, and certainly does not forgive hypocrisy. Within hours, users uncovered her history of discriminatory remarks at her firm. Former employees came forward with their own stories, painting a damning picture of Catherine's true character. The backlash was swift and merciless. Her company's website crashed under the flood of public outrage. Clients withdrew deals. Catherine's name became synonymous with corporate prejudice. Still, not all attention was positive. While Amara received messages of support from around the world, she also faced waves of online harassment. Hate-filled messages flooded her inbox. Anonymous users questioned her success, her motives, even her identity. She wanted this attention, one post read. She is using this for fame. But Amara was not interested in fame. She had lived her entire career under scrutiny. As a black woman CEO in an industry dominated by men, she was no stranger to criticism. Yet this was different. This was personal. Sitting in her office late that evening, Amara stared at the endless news coverage on her screen. Her PR team begged her to release a statement of outrage, to strike while the iron is hot. But she refused. I do not want revenge, she said quietly. I want reform. Her assistant looked up, confused. Reform? Amara nodded, eyes steady. If I let this moment pass, it becomes just another viral outrage cycle. But if I use it, maybe it becomes something more. That night, she drafted her own statement. Calm, precise, powerful. She announced a press conference to address the incident. Not to demand apologies or lawsuits, but to discuss the systemic issues that allowed it to happen in the first place. She wanted change, not sympathy. Her decision shocked everyone. Reporters speculated endlessly about what she might say. The airline scrambled to prepare its own response, terrified of what Amara's words could do to its reputation. Catherine's legal team issued vague threats, warning her to choose her words carefully. But Amara was not afraid. She knew she stood at the edge of something bigger than herself. The humiliation she endured was not just about one woman or one flight. It represented a pattern so many others had faced in silence. The day before the press conference, Amara stood before the mirror, rehearsing her speech. She spoke not as a victim, but as a leader. Every sentence carried the weight of countless untold stories. She glanced at the reflection of her late mother's photograph on her desk, the woman who had taught her grace under pressure. This time, she whispered, they will hear us. The next morning, cameras flashed as she stepped onto the stage. Reporters murmured. Live streams surged with viewers. No one expected what came next, because the woman who had been humiliated on a plane was about to change the entire aviation industry. Amara stepped onto the stage of the national television studio with the calm confidence of someone who had spent her entire life turning obstacles into opportunity. The cameras followed her every move, but she did not flinch. She had faced scrutiny, bias, and prejudice before. Today she would use it to ignite change. She began not with anger, but with clarity. "This is not just about one flight," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "It is about every person who has ever been judged before they could even speak. Every passenger who has ever been dismissed because of the color of their skin. Every employee overlooked, despite their talent and dedication. The skies should belong to everyone, and dignity must never be optional." Reporters leaned in, captivated by her poise. Viewers at home paused, scrolling ceased, and social media lit up with her words. The story that had started as a personal attack was transforming into a movement. Amara revealed the initiative she had been preparing in private. The Flight for Dignity Initiative. A comprehensive program to implement anti-discrimination training and enforce inclusive policies across all airlines. This initiative will ensure that no passenger, no employee, and no leader ever faces the kind of treatment I endured. We will teach respect. We will demand accountability. And we will create systems that protect everyone, every single day. The announcement sent shockwaves. Politicians praised her courage and vision. Activists immediately rallied to support the program. Celebrities posted videos of solidarity. The aviation industry, long slow to change, could no longer ignore the movement. Meanwhile, Catherine Miller's world collapsed with equal speed. Her company terminated her employment within hours. Her desperate public apology, claiming misunderstanding and regret, reached millions, but it came too late. The internet had already documented every moment of her prejudice. Her professional reputation evaporated, leaving her isolated, humiliated, and blacklisted across the industry. Despite the chaos, Amara remained composed. After the press conference, she returned to a quieter, more personal reflection. She visited her mother's old home, the modest apartment near the small regional airport where she had grown up. Sunlight streamed through the familiar windows, and the smell of old wood and memories filled the room. She walked slowly through the spaces where her childhood dreams had taken root. Every detail reminded her of the lessons her mother had taught: dignity, patience, perseverance, and the quiet power of rising above hate. Amara stood in the center of the living room, her hands brushing the worn furniture. "You taught me to fly when they tried to ground me," she whispered, her voice soft yet unwavering. The words carried the weight of decades of struggle and triumph. The symbolic callback was unmistakable. Her mother had given her the courage to endure humiliation, and Amara had transformed that experience into extraordinary achievement. That visit was not only personal, it became part of the story she would continue to tell. Amara understood that every victory mattered, but the lessons she shared would resonate far beyond her own life. The Flight for Dignity initiative was just the beginning. Across the nation, people watched and listened. Her calm authority contrasted sharply with Catherine's frantic attempts at explanation. Amara's poise reinforced her message. True power does not need to shout. True leadership does not need to dominate. It elevates others while standing firmly on the foundation of integrity. By the end of the day, the hashtag Flight for Dignity was trending globally. Thousands shared their own stories of bias, inspired by Amara's example. Others pledged to support the initiative, creating a network of advocacy and action that would extend far beyond aviation. In that moment, Amara Sinclair became more than a CEO. She became a symbol of resilience, leadership, and justice, proof that one person's response to prejudice could spark systemic change. Her journey from the first-class confrontation to national recognition was complete, but the movement she had ignited was just beginning. Before moving forward, take a moment to support voices that challenge injustice. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Help spread stories that inspire, educate, and change the world. Months passed, and BlueStar Airlines had transformed into the benchmark for equality and dignity in air travel. Every employee, from the ground staff to pilots, had undergone Amara Sinclair's Flight for Dignity initiative training. Passengers noticed the change immediately. Respectful service, zero tolerance for discrimination, and an environment where every traveler felt valued. Airports across the country began adopting her policies. Signs of inclusion and awareness appeared in terminals, boarding procedures were updated to prevent bias, and airlines began tracking passenger feedback to ensure equity. Amara's vision was no longer confined to a single airline. It was becoming an industry-wide movement. Recognition came from every corner. Invitations arrived from aviation forums, civil rights organizations, and global travel conferences. The pinnacle came when she received an official invitation to the White House. There, in a grand ceremony filled with dignitaries, she stood tall as the president personally awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Amara Sinclair, the president declared, is the woman who redefined what it means to soar, not just through the skies, but through barriers that once held so many back. Applause filled the hall, echoing the impact of her lifetime of perseverance and courage. Among the crowd, Catherine Miller watched from the shadows, anonymous and pale. She had followed the news relentlessly, hoping for some redemption, but the reality was undeniable. Her assumptions and prejudice had cost her career, her reputation, and her credibility. The weight of her mistakes was inescapable, and the magnitude of Amara's triumph only highlighted her own failures. Amara, meanwhile, did not dwell on vengeance. She continued to expand the Flight for Dignity initiative, providing scholarships, mentorship, and legal support for victims of discrimination in travel and transportation industries. Her leadership had turned a personal confrontation into systemic reform, demonstrating that grace and action could create lasting change. Passengers, employees, and even competitors began to reference BlueStar Airlines as the standard for ethical and inclusive operations. Amara's story was no longer just about overcoming bias. It was about transforming an entire industry through resilience, vision, and unwavering commitment to justice. The world had watched her rise, and through her determination, Amara Sinclair proved that true power lies not only in authority, but in the ability to uplift others and create change that lasts. Before we continue, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Supporting stories like Amara's helps share lessons of courage and fairness with viewers everywhere. Some believed that power meant seizing what others had, taking control by force or intimidation. Catherine Miller thought that claiming a seat would assert dominance, but Amara Sinclair had shown the world a different truth. Real power was not about who could shout the loudest or live stream the harshest accusations. Real power was building the plane that lifted others higher, creating opportunities, breaking barriers, and inspiring change. On the tarmac, months later, Amara stood with the calm and confidence she had displayed during that fateful flight. The sunlight glinted off BlueStar Airlines' polished fuselage, a symbol not just of an airline, but of the movement she had ignited. Her smile was quiet, unassuming yet victorious, a reflection of a woman who had transformed personal attack into lasting reform. The impact of that single confrontation extended far beyond the airline. A generation of young professionals, especially women and minorities dreaming of aviation or leadership, now had a living example of resilience, courage, and ethical strength. Amara's Flight for Dignity initiative continued to spread, influencing policies, education, and workplace culture worldwide. Her legacy was no longer confined to her achievements in the sky. It was written into the values of an entire industry. Catherine's downfall stood in stark contrast, a reminder that prejudice, arrogance, and unchecked assumptions carried real consequences. Yet Amara never sought revenge. Instead, she transformed the moment into a catalyst for education, equality, and empowerment. Her life had become a testament to what happens when vision, preparation, and moral courage collide. If this story moved you, remember that even one act of courage can change how the world flies. Standing up for what is right, defending dignity, and inspiring justice are actions that ripple far beyond the moment they occur. Subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us why integrity and dignity always win, even when the world seems stacked against us. Share this story with someone who needs to see that courage and fairness can rewrite a future once clouded by bias.